Hi, I'm Becky Davis with City TV. Welcome to Inside Santa Barbara, the city's only news magazine show. We bring you up to date on the city's most significant issues, projects, and events. Speaking of significance, there is no more important issue facing our city right now than the historic drought. With that in mind, our next two segments feature simple tips that, if we all follow them, we can collectively save an enormous amount of water.
Hi, I'm Kathy Perret with the City of Santa Barbara's Water Conservation Program. We're going to learn how to read our meter and use it as a tool to help find leaks. Your meter box is located in the area right by the street, usually in the parkway. You'll find it in a concrete box. A lot of times it says water meter on it. Bring a tool, or you can use your finger. You're going to lift the lid. We're going to open the top of the meter, and inside this is the tool we're going to use. First thing to notice is this little white triangle right in the middle of the dial. That's your leak indicator. If there's any water running through the pipes from the street to your house, that little dial will move. It's like a little propeller inside. Smallest stream will make it move. This meter isn't showing any leaks, so we're going to have my assistant run some water. Turn it on. There, notice that spinning? That means that there's water running through this. You can also see that the red arrow was moving, and it went from down at the 0.7 to 0.8. So each of these spaces is 3/4 of a gallon. One of the other uses for the meter as a tool is to measure how much water flow comes from our appliances. The easiest one to measure is the toilet. I'm going to have someone in the house flush the toilet. We mark that this red arrow's on the 0.9. Let's flush it. And it's going to have to flush through. And we're going to let it finish its job, and then it's going to refill. Oh, we've almost gone 3/4 of a gallon. This is a nice slow refill, so it must be a low flow toilet. But they could be running too long too. You never know. It's a good way to test how many gallons it's taking. Oh, alrighty. The toilet fill cycle, each of these numbers is 3/4 of a gallon. We use just less than 1.5 gallons for that toilet flush. That's a high efficiency toilet. You can also use the numbers along the bottom of the meter here as a tool to help to determine exactly how many gallons maybe your washer uses or your dishwasher uses. These are like a car odometer. The white numbers would be the miles, or your billing units, also known as 100 cubic feet. The black numbers would be the tenths of a mile, but in a water billing, we go by how many 100 cubic feet. So these are all a cubic foot. One time around with the arrow changes this from a 10 to an 11, and it's 7.48 gallons. So once this hits 99, it'll change your billing unit to the 47, and you will have used 1 HCF of water, or 748 gallons. If you wanted to use this as a tool to figure out how much water, say, an irrigation zone used, what you could do is write this number down, 1146.10, put one of your sprinkler zones on, time it. I usually time it for a 1-minute cycle. Turn it off, come back out, read what the number says now. There's also other parts of the meter that are just as important as the numbers. There's an emergency shutoff in here. In case of a large leak on your property, you need to turn that handle so that you can stop the water right at the meter. You can use other shutoffs on your property to help determine where the leak is by watching the arrow moving in here. And then most homes have a shutoff where the water comes into the house. So we're looking at two different shutoffs here. The one that's connected to the copper pipe is the one coming from the meter, from the main line. When we shut this off, it shuts off all the water from this point out. So it goes through the pressure regulator that goes into the house. This water would go to the house, and then this would go over and go to the irrigation system. But with this off, it goes absolutely nowhere. We'll put that back on. If we think that we've got maybe a leak in the irrigation system, or we know we've got a broken pipe and we want to stop it from running, having a shutoff right at the beginning where it hooks up to the water, you can just turn that handle up. When the handle goes across the pipe, that means there's no water that can go through it. So right now, everything from this point out to the irrigation is shut off, but we can still use the fixtures inside the house. If for some reason you shut everything off and it's still moving, the arrow and the triangle are still moving, then potentially you have a leak in the supply line going to your house. And for those type of repairs, you should call in a professional to help you find exactly where that leak is. If you're not going to be home during the day until the plumber can get there, you can shut the water off right at the valve, and that'll stop the water from leaking. Now that we're done, you want to make sure we close up the box, close the lid to the meter, and if you have any shrubbery or anything that's blocking your meter reader would really appreciate it if you'd prune that back a little bit.
For more information on how to read your water meter, visit santabarbaraca.gov/waterwise. Another great way to prevent wasted water on your property is by regularly checking your toilet for leaks. Up next, Kathy Perret shows you how.
Hi, I'm Kathy Perret with the City of Santa Barbara's Water Conservation Program. Today we're going to talk about the 3 major reasons why toilets leak. 20% of all toilets are actually leaking right now and you don't even know it. The first one is usually a flapper. You might see the water trickling in the bowl. You may hear a flush when you're the only one home. It's a ghost. It's a ghost flush. Easy to fix by changing the flapper with one that fits appropriately. The second leak, which is a silent type of a leak, is the water level in the back of the toilet tank. If you take the tank off, you look at where the water level is with the overflow tube. If you don't have an inch or at least a finger's digit between the top of the tube and the water, you can count on that water leaking down the tube and running all night. It's not one you're going to hear. And the third type of a leak is when the flapper stays up way too long and totally empties out the back of your tank, using way more water than the toilet is designed for. For the first leak we're going to test, it would be the flapper leak, when the water is going through the bottom of the tank and coming out in the bowl, going down the drain. We use food coloring in the form of dye tablets. Very simple to test. Open up the container, remove the lid, and then just drop both of those dye tabs in the back of the tank. And then we need to wait about 10 to 15 minutes. If there's any seepage of water in the flapper, that's that rubber flapper that comes up when you flush the handle, the blue from in the tank will come out in the bowl, and that'll be your idea that you need to change that flapper. It's about a $5 part. It can save you 150 gallons a day of leaking water. If you don't happen to have a package of dye tabs, you can either pick them up at the hardware store or you can use food coloring that's available at any of the grocery stores. If you look in the bowl after you've used the dye tabs and the water in the bowl is clear, you don't have a leak. If you open the bowl and you see blue, you may have just a little line of blue, or it could be totally blue. That indicates that you have a leak, and it's time to change that flapper. So we found we had blue, which meant we needed to replace our flapper. The flapper is the little rubber seal that goes on the overflow tube and hooks up to the handle to control when the water comes and goes. Best way to change this, first start, turn the water off to the back of the tank. So we'll go to the turn-off valve, turn it clockwise until it's off, and then take the tank off, flush all the water out. You'll have to hold the handle up, but because we turned the water off, it's not going to refill. We're just going to let as much water out as possible. This particular flapper has just the little wings out to the side. If you look at this one, it can either have a tube or just the wings. We're going to use just the wings. So I'm going to cut off the tube, and that will dispose of. And then when we do this one, we'll pull this off the sides, off of one wing, off of 2 wings. We've now removed this and check the rubber seal. A lot of times you'll see the rubber seal will be buckled, and that's part of the reason why the water is seeping. Then you remove it from the handle. We now have one retired flapper. The new flapper has these 2 little holes. They're going to go one around each wing, one on that side, one around on this side. Make sure it seals nicely. We hook it under here, hook it in the hole, And then now what we have is a flapper that goes up, comes back down. We're going to put the water on and make sure that it works appropriately. You always want to make sure after you've changed your flapper that you've used the toilet a few times, gotten rid of the blue, and you do the dye tabs one more time. Not every flapper fits every orifice. Sometimes they're very brand specific. And so if you have a specific brand toilet, you might need to buy the flapper that fits that one only and not use a universal flapper. The second leak that's very common is when the water level is too high over the overflow tube. So you need to remove the lid and actually take a look at where the water level is. I like as a rule of thumb to say that the water needs to be a finger's digit below the top of the overflow tube. If it's not, then you can release a little bit of water and use that C-clamp to lower the float valve, which dictates how high the water is going to be. Check it out, and the water is just about an inch below the top. So the third type of leak, which is one that you actually can't measure with the dye tabs, you actually have to visually watch it. You still want to take the top off of the tank, and then when you flush the toilet, you want to watch how long that flapper stays up. If all the water in the tank disappears and then the flapper comes down, you have an excess of volume and it's taking way more water to flush than it should. Many times when you have flapper issues, whether they're staying up too long or they're not seating properly and they're leaking and the blue food coloring is coming through, it's because the flapper is mix-matched for the brand of the toilet itself. They do sell flappers as universal flappers, but they don't always fit. If you're finding that you put a flapper in, you recheck it with the dye tabs, it's still leaking, then you need to actually look and say, oh, wow, this is an American Standard, or it's a Toto, or it's a UPC toilet, and go to the hardware store in the plumbing section and buy a flapper specifically designed to fit that style toilet.
For more information on how to check your toilet for leaks and many other water-saving tips, visit santabarbaraca.gov/waterwise. Stay tuned, we'll be right back with more Inside Santa Barbara.
That's it. Show that weed who's boss.
You know you could just pull it.
But it's so much easier to spray it with poison and kill it.
But the poison will run into our storm drains, creeks, and ocean.
Do you want to swim in that? Swim in that? Swim in that?
Remember, the ocean begins on your street.
Welcome back. The drought has been hard on trees throughout the city, none more so than the historic Italian stone pines here on Anapamu. The Parks Department has been hand watering these trees to keep them alive, but that's a time-consuming job. That's why they've recently begun experimenting with a new watering technique that requires a lot less labor. City TV's Chris Bell has the story.
When renowned horticulturist Dr. A.B. Doremus began planting Italian stone pines on Anapamu Street in 1908, Santa Barbara was a different place. The roads were dirt and the traffic was light. Today, the life of these historic trees is as hard as the streets and sidewalks surrounding them. A tangle of utilities zigzag underneath, and their roots are trimmed routinely to accommodate the necessities of urban life. Add years of drought to the mix, and the result is magnificent trees under terrible stress.
Part of what's occurring is there are beetles that attack pine trees. They're here all the time. They attack pine trees all the time. Well, the pine defends against that by pushing the insects back out when they attack with sap. If the trees are weakened because of drought, they don't have enough sap to push the insects out.
To help the stone pines in this fight, Parks Department staff have been hand watering them, but the process is time-consuming.
Gentleman sticks a probe in the ground, turns the water on, and then moves along and waters all the trees. It takes about 8 days for one staff member to water all the trees.
Not only is the process of hand watering the stone pines laborious, it also keeps staff from caring for other trees throughout the city. This has given staff plenty of incentive to look for alternatives. Ironically, one has emerged in the form of what otherwise is a barrier.
Tree People USA out of Los Angeles developed a unique way to water trees at the LA Zoo. It's actually a traffic control device that's used to block off places they don't want vehicles to go or whatnot. So what Tree People did was they put a valve on it and a soaker hose, and then they turn the valve on and it releases the water slowly and therefore irrigates the soil slowly. When we installed these 25 irrigades in the initial phase, he filled up all 25 irrigades in an hour and a half. So instead of spending 8 days out here, they can spend much less time out here and be watering other trees.
Forestry staff believe the slow, deep watering provided by these so-called irrigades will not only be more efficient than the probe method, it'll also be more effective.
We anticipate that the water will penetrate deeper than we can apply it by hand, because once the water starts bubbling up from the ground when you're using a probe, you have to stop watering. There's no more room for it to go. But the irrigade lets the water drip slowly over time, and more of it will penetrate in and hopefully deeper, so that the trees will get a better benefit of water each time.
And these devices give the public the opportunity to join in the fight to preserve street trees during the drought. If you have an irrigade or its smaller relative, the tree gator, on the tree fronting your property, you can contact the Parks Division at 564-5433 to see how you can assist with filling it. Italian stone pines in a natural environment can live up to 300 years. Only time will tell whether these irrigades will be the solution that saves our stone pines from the stresses of drought and extends their lives. In the meantime, staff will closely monitor their effectiveness and continue to maintain the precious resource that is Santa Barbara's urban forest.
The Parks Department is pursuing a grant to purchase an additional 30 irrigades. For more information on how to care for trees during the drought, visit santabarbaraca.gov/treecare. The City of Santa Barbara's Creeks Division has recently teamed up with Explore Ecology to form several watershed education programs. The programs range from class instruction to on-site creek cleanups to various field trips.
Come on.
In an effort to help youth learn how to become stewards of the environment, the City of Santa Barbara Creeks Division has contracted with Explore Ecology to form several watershed education programs, such as this group of McKinley Elementary students visiting the Watershed Resource Center located at Arroyo Burro Beach.
They are part of our Creek Kids series, which is a series of 3 lessons that we do with the classes. So the first lesson we go into their school and we're with them for an hour. The second lesson we come here to the Watershed Resource Center and to a local creek. And then the third lesson we go back into the school.
Students participate in hands-on activities to learn about our local watersheds, creeks, dangers of plastics in the ocean, and solutions to pollution.
At the Creeks Division, our main focuses are creek restoration, water quality improvement, and community education and outreach. So education is a large part of our program, because when we talk about pollution in the city of Santa Barbara, we talk a lot about non-point source pollution. The pollution is coming from all over, from people's everyday activities, from what you do on your lawn, from what you do on the street at work, just anywhere around the community. So it's not like there's one specific spot where the pollution is coming from. So if we can educate people about all of these various sources of pollution, then hopefully they can take action to prevent these pollutants from entering the watershed.
At the Watershed Resource Center, the instructor uses a model to show how water travels through an urbanized watershed. It demonstrates how pollution gets into creeks and the effects it has on the health of the environment and people.
Well, if we want kids to be good stewards of the environment, they have to actually understand the impact that they have so that they can actually take action. We've been fortunate this school year we're actually writing cause and effect, pro-con on the bag ban. And so being able to see not only the natural things that are part of a watershed, but what are the things that might end up there inadvertently and how can they affect change.
The children learn firsthand how their actions can adversely affect the ocean and the life forms living in it.
We talk a lot about marine debris and litter and really encourage people to do that action step of going down and picking up litter when we see it and being responsible for our own waste that we create.
The Santa Barbara Creeks Division hopes that each child will take away a better understanding that water is a limited resource and that they have the power to protect the health of our creeks and ocean.
Getting kids to their beaches, to their mountains, and understanding the dynamic systems of Earth and the place they have in it and how they impact positive and negative is important.
I think that a lot of people and kids as well think of nature as something that's outside the city. They grow up in an urban environment and they think that maybe when they go camping or if they go visit the beach or a forest somewhere, that's where nature is. But nature is really throughout the whole city, and we want them to value that and to help protect it.
For more information about the many programs offered by Explore Ecology, visit exploreecology.org. Whether it's for transportation, exercise, or just fun, there are plenty of good reasons to ride a bike in Santa Barbara. But recently there's been an uptick in the amount of accidents involving cyclists. Up next, City TV's Chris Bell examines some of the ways the city's trying to reduce accidents and promote safe cycling.
When Dixie Thompson, manager of the Arlington Hotel, rode the first bicycle up State Street in 1869, he caused quite a commotion. Bicycles were a rare sight in Santa Barbara until the mid-1880s, but the bicycle, then as now, provided a fun and affordable transportation option. Soon, there were so many cyclists in Santa Barbara that they were causing traffic problems. In 1894, the City Council reacted by passing 2 ordinances. The first required cowbells on bicycles to warn pedestrians of possible conflicts. The second imposed a speed limit of 7 miles per hour. With the advent of the automobile, the heyday of the bicycle was short-lived. By the 1920s, streetcars and automobiles dominated local streets, originally built and paved for bicycle and buggy use. Today, bicycling is enjoying a renaissance in Santa Barbara. In just the past 12 years, the number of bicycle commuters in town has more than doubled to nearly 7%, ranking Santa Barbara 3rd nationally for cities our size. But along with increased ridership has come an uptick in accidents. Year to date, there has been an 18% increase in bicycle traffic collisions over the same period in 2013, and that's 29% more than in 2012.
Bicycling is growing in a big way, and our city has a pretty vibrant economy, and so what that makes for a really active downtown. The problem with that is with all the new riders, we have a lot of tourists, we've got a lot of folks that are maybe a little unfamiliar with our downtown, and so they might not know all the rules of the roads or all the routes, and sometimes they're distracted as well.
Most common one I see is riders riding without any visible clothing, against traffic, and sometimes on the sidewalk. And also many riders don't respect the rule of the road, going through stop sign or red light, and that gives kind of a bad reputation for all of us bicyclists who try to be bike ambassadors.
In response to the increase in bicycle-related collisions and to improve safety for all road users, the police department, with coordination from the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition, conducted 2 days of targeted enforcement in the downtown on November 11th and 12th.
The most common infractions, which was borne out when we were writing the tickets, is riding on the sidewalk, riding through the red light, and failing to stop for stop signs. Those would be the 3 top bicycle violations that we come across.
We're mostly trying to affect adherence to existing rules. We're not trying to do anything new or crazy or out of the ordinary, but we have posted speed limits, we've got marked crosswalks, we've got designated bike lanes, and what we want to do is make sure people are just following the rules of the road.
As a bike rider myself, I thought it would be a good idea to get a refresher on those rules of the road. So I went to bicycle instructor extraordinaire Mike Vergeer of SB Bike.
Okay, ready?
It turns out the rules for bikes are virtually identical to those for cars.
You should have a look at the California Vehicle Code. It's got thousands of items on it about how to drive safely. There are only 4 or 5 or so that are specific to bicyclists. The other 5,000 of them are the same for bicyclists as they are for drivers of cars.
So the ticket to safe bicycling on the road is to consider yourself a vehicle and behave accordingly.
So bicycles have to stop for red lights just as cars do. Bicycles have to stop for stop signs, full and complete stop, just like a car has to do. A bicycle is not allowed to impede the roadway. A bicycle is not allowed to violate pedestrians' right-of-ways. So any moving violation that you can think of that applies to a car also applies to a bicycle.
When it comes to technique, lane positioning is key.
You don't want to assume that these cars are unoccupied, and you want to assume that the door might be thrown open at any moment. So I'm always about 4 feet outside of the door zone here.
It's important to know that safe lane positioning is relative. For instance, if you're riding on a street with no bike lane that doesn't have enough room to both keep the 4-foot distance from parked cars while keeping you out of traffic, you need to take the lane.
I'm going to take the lane.
Taking the lane means moving to the center of the lane, precluding cars from passing you.
If I were any further to the right, I'd be encouraging cars behind me to come up and pass me along the left side, and that's not safe for anybody. But now that the street is widened up again, I'm going to veer back over to the right. We're limited as to the ways that we can communicate with drivers. I can make hand signals, and those are great, but also my lane positioning is a really strong indicator to drivers of cars around me of what I'm about to do next. So if they see me moving toward the center, they know that I'm either going to go straight or turn left.
Thanks to California's new 3 feet for safety law, drivers must now leave at least 3 feet of clearance when passing a bicyclist.
3 feet is not that much, but at least as a cyclist, it's very disturbing when a car zips by at a feet or 2 from us. So it's kind of a law to make sure that we don't frighten cyclists. It's a courteous way of passing cyclists.
And that brings us to another key component to safe bicycling: courtesy.
Go ahead.
Giving respect may not be required by the vehicle code, but it can go a long way in driver-bicyclist relations and getting respect.
I got a red light up here. I'm going to pull into the center of the lane so that cars might need to make a right turn on the side of me.
And as a reminder for drivers, courtesy is a two-way street.
Are you sure? Okay, thank you.
And that courtesy should extend to pedestrians. If you don't have a bell, a simple "on your left" will suffice. So I'm looking over my shoulder, it's clear, the road ahead is clear. On your left.
The road ahead for bicycling in Santa Barbara is also clear thanks to the Bicycle Master Plan, which was first adopted in 1974 and is currently being updated for 2015.
And the Bicycle Master Plan is a document that guides all of our efforts for bicycle improvements. We like to have a list of projects in there that tell us what we need to do next. It also enables us to get funding from state and federal sources. There are many requirements that say you have to have an adopted Bicycle Master Plan in order to get outside funding for projects. So that's a big purpose of the plan.
With the Bicycle Master Plan as its guide, the city will continue to strive to create more bike facilities and promote safe behavior through education and enforcement. And while the focus is on bicycles, all modes of transportation benefit.
The more people we get using our transit system and walking for some of their short trips and bicycling, it's one of the few tools we have left to combat congestion. One of the nicest things about Santa Barbara is it's pretty easy to get almost anywhere in town, but as the city grows and the economy stays vibrant, that leads to more traffic congestion. We want to keep automobile travel easy, flexible, and cheap here in Santa Barbara, and one of the ways to do that is to get the folks who are willing to bike, walk, or take transit to go ahead and take those trips.
The Bicycle Master Plan is scheduled to be updated next year. To find out how you can participate, call Peter Brown at 897-2669. Stay tuned, we'll be right back with more Inside Santa Barbara.
Come on, man. You know that storm drain leads straight into our creeks and ocean. It's only a little of it. Just dump it. It only takes a little to pollute the water. Besides, you want to swim in that? Swim in that? Swim in that?
Remember, the ocean begins on your street.
Welcome back. Did you know that 1 in 10 Americans have a hearing loss disability? Up next, we explore how the city, along with local businesses and organizations, is employing a simple technology that is helping Santa Barbara to become more accessible to the hearing impaired.
Hearing loss is the third most common physical disability in the U.S. It's a disability that cannot be seen, yet it can really affect the way people live their lives. The Santa Barbara chapter of the Hearing Loss Association of America is one local organization involved in creating a more accessible city for people with hearing loss.
We're more the support end of the Nationals organization, so we're there more to educate people on how to live with a hearing loss. We teach them about the devices that are available to them, the different hearing aids, cochlear implants, and the emotional aspect of how to live with the hearing loss.
In Santa Barbara, one of the assistive listening devices that is becoming more common is the hearing loop.
Hearing loop is an assistive listening system that transfers sound wirelessly to people's existing hearing aids. So people that already have hearing aids that are equipped with a T-coil, they can just press a button on the hearing aid and wirelessly receive the signal from a public venue that has a hearing loop installed.
Unlike other assistive listening devices, hearing loops enhance sound, not just make it louder.
It's the only system that you can use with your personal hearing aid. So we know that hearing aid is calibrated for your individual level of loss, much like eyeglasses would be. So using that instrument to receive the signal makes a world of difference.
Hearing loops are preferred because they are simple and discreet. There is no need to wear bulky headpieces, and they are compatible with hearing aids equipped with a T-coil.
It's very, very simple to use, way more simpler than anything else that could be done for us. It doesn't require us to have our own device. It doesn't require you to stand out, in front of other people with a headset on or whatever. You just discreetly walk in, you turn your coil on, and you're already into the loop.
This particular assistive listening device has been installed in many local venues thanks to the advocacy done by Loop Santa Barbara.
Loop Santa Barbara is a project of the Independent Living Resource Center. We received grant funding from the California Communications Access Foundation to do this project in Santa Barbara County. Our mission is to educate people about hearing loop technology and its benefits.
So far, 23 buildings in Santa Barbara have been looped, covering entertainment venues, churches, and city government buildings. These include the Libero Theater, the City Council chambers in Santa Barbara, and here at the Trinity Episcopal Church. Let's go take a look.
People think of spiritual practice as things like prayer and meditation, but for us, inclusion is one of our most important spiritual practices. So we're always looking for ways to make our community accessible to more people. In order to include and allow full participation of people with different hearing abilities, we needed a way of assisting them in listening.
It's not going to sound as a distance, it's going to sound like they're right there on stage. So it is probably the best system that we've had, and so this is a great starting place for us with the hearing loop. It's going to want them to come back even more and enjoy and be able to partake in these various shows and events and concerts that we have here.
It's important in any society that all citizens have an equal opportunity to participate, particularly in government. That is one of the reasons the city created the Access Advisory Committee.
The purpose of the committee is to improve city facilities, access for people with disabilities to city facilities, and also to the city's programs, activities, and services. They meet quarterly. Actually, we wouldn't have known about hearing looping had a member of the community not come to the Access Advisory Committee and told us, hey, there's this great technology that can reach a lot of people in the city of Santa Barbara, and you should consider putting it into some of your public meeting rooms.
Although Santa Barbara is one of the most accessible cities in California, there are still barriers that people with disabilities have to face in their everyday lives here.
The barriers that are there would be both accessibility, physical accessibility, as well as attitudinal barriers. Oftentimes, historically, people with disabilities have not been looked at equally compared to those who are non-disabled. So it's about kind of changing those perceptions of people and showing that we can live independently, we can make our own decisions, and we can live independent lives in general.
If you have a hearing disability and would like to know if a facility has a hearing loop, look for the little blue sign with an ear on it.
A lot of times, a lot of our patrons didn't know that we had it here. And so it was their first opportunity to wirelessly tune in with their hearing aids for a performance. And some people have come up to me and said over the years that they had lost their hearing, and it takes them back to when they were younger and that they're able to hear clearly.
People who are hard of hearing maybe were not able to be as involved as they can be now because they couldn't hear clearly what the city council or whatever board it was saying, and so they weren't able to speak to what was being said because they weren't an active part of the process. And now with the looping, it's given them the ability to be that active voice that they should have been all along.
There was a huge sigh of relief of a fairly large percentage of our congregation who have some form of hearing loss, and were suddenly able to participate again. Maybe the most remarkable comment I heard was from a man who on the very first day, after deciding that he wasn't going to come to church anymore because he couldn't hear, on the very first day the loop was in, he listened and he said that he could hear the water pouring from the cruet into the chalice. And to have that accessibility to sound is something even people of full hearing ability didn't have.
If you have a hearing aid and are wondering if you can take advantage of hearing loop technology, visit hearingloss.org. There are few places that spark adventure and ignite imagination more than a library. For children, it represents a world of exploration and discovery. Up next, we learn more about our own library and the new campaign that was launched to enhance this valuable resource. Do you remember your first trip to the library? Or the day you received your first library card? The library is an important resource for children, and it provides a fun environment to develop valuable, lifelong learning skills.
We provide a whole array of programs for the very young kids, the Fabulous Friday programs, to the older kids. And there just isn't enough space in that area. In the last couple of years, we've removed some bookshelves to make room for the homework help. And it's really a shame that in a community that values education and culture, that we have such a constraint on the services that we can provide to kids.
With the 57% surge in children's summer reading participation last year alone, the current 1,500 square foot space is undersized, dark, and crowded.
We are a happy, busy place up there, but it is crowded. It's dark. There's old, big, dark wood furniture. The books for the 3rd and 4th grade kids are on shelves that are this high, and it's just, I actually had a little girl a couple of weeks ago ask me for the drawing books. I walked her to the area and I said, they're here, take a look. And she came back a little while later and she said, I didn't find any drawing books. And I went back and I had pointed to one shelf, but most of them were up, and she said, well, those are too high. I mean, so basic things like that, where we have a little bit of elbow room, we have beautiful sunlight coming in, we have more places to sit, more places to relax and kind of spread out.
Even from the beginning, it really was lacking, not enough space, very awkwardly arranged, and not very attractive. And even then, the community weighed in and felt that the space got short shrift. It was elevated to a council meeting where the council tried to find a fix from the dais. So it's really been a goal for us for all that time to try to do something to enhance the space.
To alleviate these issues, a public campaign was launched to raise $5.6 million for a new and improved children's library.
I was involved from the beginning. I was the president of the Junior League of Santa Barbara, and this idea was really a collaboration at that point. When the Junior League was looking to change their focus area, we were looking for things that members could have hands-on opportunities with. So our development or research committee, if you would, met with Irene and talked about what the opportunities here at the library would be. And that's really where the fun and the imagination sparked. So everybody got together and thought, well, wouldn't it be great to have an amazing state-of-the-art children's area of the library? We weren't even thinking as big as the basement. And so it really just came together, and that's what started this whole project moving and rolling forward.
Well, I think Santa Barbara is a great community in so many respects. It seems odd that we would have some great history, a wonderful downtown area with great resources educationally at the college level, and yet we left out the basic building blocks at the beginning. So I just think it sort of fills in a gap that's existed for a long time. And it's kind of odd that we let it go this long, so it's time to make it happen.
The campaign is called Building a Love of Reading, and the new Children's Library plans to do just that.
When you give children the gift of reading, you're really sparking their imagination. You're letting them be creative. You're letting them travel to places that they never thought possible. And really that's what we're trying to do here, is have children get that spark and love of reading so that they can carry it through their lifetime and be a part of society in ways that they might not have had the opportunity to without reading.
Although the space is empty now, the new Children's Library will be located in the lower level of the public library. This space is 4 times the size of the current children's area and has enough room for technology hubs, reading nooks, homework help, special performances, and more.
The programs will have a kind of a natural Santa Barbara history feel to them, the islands and lots of Santa Barbara specific, and so that's exciting. And then once you get out into the open space, you're going to have the main library desk where the librarians will have sight vision across the whole space for safety purposes, as well as reading nooks in with the light. It's going to be great.
Right now we spend a lot of time reserving rooms and bumping rooms, and we just want to have fun with the kids. And this space, there's a space that's just for story time that will have no other things in it, and that will really help. Right now sometimes there's amazing sculptures up there, but that gets pretty scary when there's a bunch of toddlers in the room. And then that space will be able to transform in the afternoon to a homework help area, where right now we're also very crowded. So I think we'll just be able to do everything better. And there's some people that want to come to the library still for a quiet place to dream and read, and sometimes it's not possible up there.
Over $3.5 million has been raised so far.
The campaign is split into 2 parts. The money to raise so that we could actually break ground, not break ground in the sense of start construction, because we don't have to break ground. And that was the first $3.6 million, and then the rest is endowment. And so we wanted to raise all of it prior to the end of the construction phase, which means that the library opens in June with an endowment, and we've already raised all the money. Even if that doesn't happen, we still have time to keep raising the money, so we'll raise the money until we get the endowment raised.
The campaign began with a $500,000 donation from the city and a few other large donations from local foundations and donors. Now, the Children's Library hopes the community will recognize the need and value of this project and come together to raise the remaining $2 million.
It's so critical to this community, given not only our demographics, but without illiterate children in a society, we will not have a thriving workforce. And our community is special in that the library is used by everybody. It's used from the poorest of the poor to the wealthiest. The library is really the hub of social interaction for our children. And it's really the first place where kids go when they can feel independence.
It's kind of a pull the community together kind of a project because it benefits everybody and at the basic level of initial reading and literacy. And that's really important. And I think even high school kids know that, and middle school kids know that, and especially the kids who are coming in to the reading programs know that. So that's why it's not just people nearby or downtown or anybody just in one community. It's the whole community tying together to realize this is an essential portion of education.
I think the kids in this community deserve the best library, and it really is a community gathering place, and we have so many supporters. This is really the time for them to step forward and be a part of this group effort to provide an inspiring place for kids.
The library hopes to begin construction at the beginning of 2015, with a grand opening set for next summer. For more information about the Children's Library or how to donate, visit sbchildrenslibrary.org. Well, that does it for this episode of Inside Santa Barbara. If you have questions or comments about the show, you can give us a call at 564-5311. You can also watch the show online at citytv18.com. I'm your host, Becky Davis, and remember to get involved inside Santa Barbara.